All right, welcome everybody. I appreciate you all coming out today. Well, we've been ministering on the family. We've had a message just on the family, message on mothers. Last week I brought a little word on fathers. And so part of the family, really the core foundational element of a family is what? It's marriage. That's where it all happens. Marriage is that foundation. Without that, you just have a bunch of individuals walking around. But the marriage of a man and a woman and the children that come from that obviously is what a family is. And so we want to look at marriage today. Next week, Brother David will bring another message on marriage, maybe with a slightly different focus of some of the mechanics of it. I want to look at it kind of in a high level of what it is as a covenant, as God has given it to us. And thinking about this, remember, Christians aren't the only people to get married. Everybody in the world gets married. Marriage is God's thing in all cultures, across all cultures. And so there are elements of what I'll say today which are specific to a Christian, of which I am, and my wife, and everyone listening probably this morning. But then they also will port across to any culture or any religious thing. Marriage, there are certain foundational principles that are universal to all people in the world. Now, I understand as we talk about marriage, and I've given this a great deal of thought, like a lot of things in the Bible, they're not exactly the way God would want them to be. How else can I put it? Our walk in the Spirit is not always what it should be. Our families are not always what they should be. Our finances, our everything, God has brought us into a place where He's calling us to a higher level. I spoke a while back on kingdom living in the day-to-day, and that is that God has raised the bar for us, for His children. He wants us to be a certain way, and He's given us and enabled us to walk in the ways that He wishes. Oftentimes we don't. We go astray. You read it throughout the course of the whole Bible. His people, His children, whoever, often don't fulfill His will. That's just the reality of it. And I understand that even in our small group, there are marriages which are not all they should be, or marriages that might have ended. And it's affected me too, as well. So I totally get it. And we want to look at marriage the way God is looking at it. And I want you just to appropriate that to yourself and your situation, wherever that might find you. So marriage will be our topic today. God has an intention for marriage, and He has a design for it that will fulfill His intentions. And the more we follow that, the closer we walk to the way God wants us to be, the more we will please Him and be in His will. And the more He will bless that relationship we call marriage. Now, I was looking around for a definition of marriage. And some were okay. I was like, well, why don't you think of one? No, I'd rather find somebody else. And I found a good one. And I want to use this definition, it's not my own, as sort of a starting point today as we look at some principles of marriage, okay? So here's the quote. I'll just read it. Marriage is a committed and enduring union between two individuals, characterized by mutual love, trust, and support, providing emotional stability and security, often with the expectation of forming a family unit. That's a big sentence. I'm going to parse it out a little bit and pull out some of the main points. I think it's good. It's a good place to start. One thing it said was marriage is a committed and enduring union. The key word there for me is commitment. If you're going to enter into a marriage relationship, you should be entering into a commitment. I'm not talking about do I love you today. I'm talking about I'm committed to you today and forever. It's the old till death do us part. Easy to say, obviously a little hard to pull off sometimes in the world we live in. It is a commitment. Mary and I have been married 41 years. And I can't say our marriage has been everything a marriage should be, because no marriage is, right? We're human beings. We're fallen. We do all we can. One thing we did get right, though, I will say, to our credit, by God's grace, is we decided day one, we're committed to this institution, this covenant. This is it. We're not going anywhere. I don't care till death do us part, literally. And so commitment is key to a successful marriage. You're You're in it to win it. Both of you are in it to make it happen, to make it what it should be. And commitment is the key word. And then he talks about a union of two, a committed and enduring union. And that's something that's unique in any relationship. You can have friendships, you could be dating somebody, even in your own family you have close ties, but you don't have a union. That's where two come together. The two shall become one flesh is what we read in the Bible. That's unique to marriage. And at one point, there's a few passages about marriage our Lord Jesus spoke of. Matthew 5, Matthew 19, Mark 10, Luke 16. Those are the centers. Those are the nuclear centers of his ministry on marriage, and they're tough passages. We looked at one in those messages on the kingdom living. But I want to look at just, not to actually turn to it, but just talk about it. In Matthew 19, Jesus gets quizzed by the religious authorities. And there they say, should a man divorce his wife for any cause? And then Jesus answers them, and he said, well, from the beginning it wasn't so. But God said a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and what? The two shall become one flesh. That's it. That's the beginning of it all. And they said, well, okay, fine. Well, then why did Moses write in Deuteronomy 24 to write a bill of divorcement? Like you can just, write it down and that's that. You know what he answered? He said the only reason that was given was because of your hard heart. The only reason that marriages dissolve, I'll say, sadly, is because of hard hearts. At the core of it, I'm being real honest, being real pure here. It's because of some selfish thought that is messing up this divine union that God so wants to preserve. That's why Jesus was so harsh on his commands about marriage and divorce. And you can read them. It's a whole nother weeks of messages. We could go into all of that. But remember those passages, Matthew 5, 19, Mark 10, Luke 16, they're all there. One flesh, that's a spiritual reality that is present in marriage exclusively. The two become one flesh. And you can think about all the ramifications of that. There's a whole lot that goes into that one statement. So a committed union, commitment. I'm committed to this. We're in it to win it. That's marriage. You don't see that in any other relationship. Dating, all this stuff, no, it's over, it stops. That's the problem, really. If we're dating all the time, and I'll date for a while, and then I'll break up, and then I'll date and break up, and then I'll date and break up, and then I'll get married and break up. We formed a bad habit that if something isn't right, we just dissolve the relationship. Well, you can do that if you're dating, but I'll say you shouldn't do that if you're married. Why? Because if you're really married, and that's another thing we could discuss, you're one flesh with that person. And there's nothing like that in all the world. And then another word, marriage is a committed and enduring union between two individuals characterized by mutual love, trust, and support. Mutual. That means everybody's got some skin in the game. Actually, everybody has a 100% commitment to that. That's what mutual is, a shared responsibility. In football, coming up on training, I'm a big football fan. You probably know that by now. And you'll hear these players, they'll ask them, well, what are you going to do to make this team better? And they'll say, well, I'm just going to do my 1/11th, because there's 11 people on each side. The offense and defense have 11 players. And so they say, and it's a good thing, I'm going to do my 1/11th. I'm whatever position I play, I'm just going to do that position to the best of my ability, and the team will all benefit. Well, that's great in a football game. But in marriage, you don't do your 1/50th, You don't do half. Two halves don't make a whole in marriage. 100%, two wholes make another whole, right? And that's how it has to be. It has to be a mutual issue. Each individual is invested in the benefit of the other individual. That's what marriage should be. It's not I'm getting mine and she's getting hers. No, I'm all for her. And you will see this later on in Ephesians 5, the role of the man and the woman a little bit. And I'm just going to touch on it because I think David will bring it out more. But mutual love. So we have committed union, mutual love, and then it talks about emotional stability and security. Oh, that's so good. In a marriage relationship, a real one where it's happening, God's in it, you're committed to it, there is a security and a stability that you get in no other relationship. No friendships, no family even, nothing. There is a security, and that is emotional stability. You don't ever have to say, does he still like me? Does he still think I'm pretty? Is she going to be with me tomorrow? You don't ever have to think about any of that. Security, emotional security. How many broken hearts have occurred in dating relationships where one person, maybe the woman, the girl, she thinks, oh, this is for real, and the guy's like, somewhere, and all of a sudden he breaks it up, and he breaks her heart. God doesn't want that. God doesn't want broken hearts. He wants a secure, emotional relationship where you can grow without any of those concerns. Nothing like that. No concerns at all about if somebody going to still be there tomorrow. You're done thinking like that. And there's a song I like to sing, an old Loggins Messina song, and it's about a guy that's just gotten married and he's just starting a family, and there's a nice line in there. It says, now the face of a girl that shares my name, now I'm through with the game. This boy will never be the same. I like that. I'm through with the game, the dating game. There is you have to play that game in the beginning to meet somebody and get to know them and all of that and grow close and learn. Well, I get that. But at some point, when you're married, you're through with the game. You're never looking out there at somebody else, some other shining objects. There are a lot of them out there, right? Tall, dark, and handsome, right? But you're not looking there anymore because you've committed to one. You're gonna hitch to that wagon forever, for the rest of your life, and you have to go into it thinking long term, not to see. I wonder if this is going to work out. No, we're going to work it out if it has to be worked out. Now, some relationships, there isn't a lot of issues. There's just something about it, compatibility and so forth. Other relationships are tenuous, but instead of seeing, well, we'll see if it works out, and no, I'm going to work this out. We're going to work this out. We have these discussions. If there comes a conflict, an irreconcilable difference, well, it's time to start talking about it. Time to get it all out on the table. Time to get humble. Time to get godly. To resolve issues so that you never have to be concerned about whether it's going to end. It's just going to get better and better and better. That's what God wants. He's invested in your marriage. And it's not in the quote here, but I'll add it. Security, commitment, mutual love, security, and I'll say sanctity. That's holiness. In marriage, there is a holiness that's not present in other relationships, certainly not a dating relationship. And I want to read a passage which is it's amazing. 1 Corinthians 7:14. Now this is describing a situation where there are there's a couple, and one is a believer and the other isn't. How they got there doesn't say. They might have both been lost and then got married, and then somebody was converted by the message of Jesus, received eternal life, and the husband or the other spouse is still the same. Okay? Or maybe they married an unbeliever, something the Bible warns you about. Don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. You're supposed to, if you're a believer, a Christian, that should be your primary goal. The number one check box on the list is, does this person loves the Lord like I do? Because that's such a central part of your whole being, and it should be. Anyway, let me read this verse. The unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife. She's the believer in this case. And the unbelieving wife, it's the other way around, is made holy because of her husband. So either way, whoever is the believer, it says the spouse is in it, it's a what? He's made holy. Well, we know that holy means set apart, Doesn't mean the guy's morally blameless or anything like that. He probably isn't, or she isn't. But they're holy. They're set apart because of the association with their believing spouse. Think about that. And it says, otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. Wait a minute. Because I'm a believer and I'm married to an unbeliever and we have children who haven't trusted the Lord yet, the whole thing is holy? The whole relationship is? Yes, because of the influence of one. That unbelieving spouse is closer to the Lord than they ever would be otherwise. Why? Because the two have become one flesh. They're very close to you. And they're very intimate with you. And you have discussions you wouldn't have otherwise. And all of these things make that unbelieving spouse and those unbelieving children closer, I'll say, to the Lord, set apart because of the influence of that believing party in that relationship. That's how cool marriage is. That's how powerful that relationship is, that it can even achieve that. And then, of course, the physical union of marriage is holy, and I'll touch on that in just a moment too. And in a great contrast to the sexual debauchery that's in the world. You know, there's just all kinds of things going on. But in marriage, all of a sudden, it's holy. What was unholy is now holy because God has blessed it. And it's actually, He's created it. He's created you for it. And we'll look at that more in just a moment. So this out of this quote, and we even haven't looked at really many Bible verses, this is what marriage is for anyone in the world. Commitment to it, a mutual love of and trust and support. In other words, 100% responsibility on both parties for its success. A security, this emotional peace and security that everything's going to be okay. And then a sanctity, a holiness that's present in marriage that isn't present in any other relationship, not even in the church relationships. In the marriage, there is a sanctity and a holiness that's present. Now, as you look around and do some study, you'll find out that not everybody really believes this. In fact, the world we live in today, the current culture we're involved with in our country, marriage is, it's okay, but it's not great, especially to millennials. Now, I looked up some quotes on millennials and marriage. So let me read a couple of these just to give you a little flavor of where, I'll say, kids are. Well, my kids like to say way back in the 90s. Okay, it doesn't seem like that far back, but it really is, you know. So here, Sarah, 29, she says, I think it's important to establish your own identity and career before getting married. Marriage can wait until I've achieved my personal goals. Well, what's that all about? It's all about me. It's not about me and you. It's about me. Jason, 31, says, financial stability is crucial for me. I want to ensure that I'm financially secure before taking the step of getting married. Okay, I understand that money can be a problem in a marriage, there's no doubt. In fact, it's probably one of the more common issues in marriage, is people aren't taking care of one another. We looked at fathers last message about their responsibility in caring and taking care of their wife and their family. It's on them. There are many variations to that. But when are you financially secure? When do you finally arrive? You know, do you ever arrive at financial stability? Mark 30 says, I don't believe marriage is necessary to validate a relationship. Long-term commitment can happen without a legal document. So this person thinks that marriage is a legal document. Well, it is. There's a civil aspect to marriage, but it's a lot more than that. Apparently, he doesn't quite get it. So he just thinks, hey, I can just have a relationship, a long-term relationship. But you can, but it's not marriage. You're missing it, Mark. And then Anna here, 28, says, mental health and personal well-being are my priorities. Marriage is not off the table, but it comes after ensuring both partners are mentally healthy and happy. Now, you tell me when exactly you're going to be happy enough to get married, right? Happiness is based on circumstances. So these people, these millennials, oh boy. And then lastly, David, 26, he says, I think relationships could be flexible and open to change. Marriage can be part of that, but it's not the end goal. No, David, it is the end goal. Marriage is awesome. It is amazing when you see it for what it is and you step into it. Because in all of these things, you've got all these I and me and my's going on. You got all these things you cannot define, happiness and financial stability, and all these things are, you just don't know. And at any time you can say, well, I'm not happy anymore, or I'm not, this is where a lot of people are today. And marriage is on the ropes. I mean, the statistics are not encouraging. And these quotes are not encouraging. But take heart, saints. I'm going to have some other quotes at the very end of the message which will encourage you. So let's think about it a little more deeply. What does the Bible say about marriage? Well, it says a lot. And in fact, in preparing this, I had to say, well, what has to be left out? Well, almost everything, because there's so much to talk about. But just for today, Hebrews 13:4 is a verse I love and look to often when I'm thinking about marriage. Very simply, it says, marriage is honorable. Honorable. That word, timius in the Greek, is used in many ways. It is translated of marriage as honorable, of exceptional value. This is how this word is used in other contexts. Costly, precious, of great worth. Oftentimes it's translated precious. There's a lot of precious things in the Bible. That's a nice study. There's precious stones. You read about them in Revelation, all these beautiful jewels. Precious stones, precious gold. James talks about the precious fruit of the farmer. The exceeding great and precious promises of God. Same word, honorable, precious. And if that's not enough, if you don't think highly enough about how honorable marriage is, it is the precious blood of Christ is also used. That's the level of marriage in God's eyes, and it should be in ours too. Marriage is a holy, godly institution, a covenant. And then it says later on in that verse, marriage is honorable in all, and what? The bed is undefiled. The bed is undefiled. Now that gets pretty specific, doesn't it? The sexual union of a married couple is central to the relationship. It's part of what is the two becoming one flesh. Not the only part, but that's part of it. That physical union. And the Bible promotes it. There's not hiding anywhere in the Bible about that union. Just read your Bible. Go read the Song of Solomon. If there's something wrong there, they ought to just rip it right out, right? No, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's promoted. And it's not just in the enjoyment of it all, but in its function in creating a family, procreation. That's one of the first commandments, was to be fruitful to those two that got everything started, good old Adam and Eve. Be fruitful. Have that union. And realize some of you were brought up in godly homes and didn't have a lot of misgivings or mistakes in these areas. Not everyone fits into that category. I don't. So I had to get a little lesson from the Bible that what was wrong and bad and nasty is now beautiful and good. Well, that's quite an education, but it had to happen. Marriage is honorable. It is precious. It is of exceptional value, and the bed is undefiled. It's all beautiful. All of it. Promoted. God wants it to happen. And the result of it could be children. And then you have a family. Let's look a little deeper at that Adam and Eve. I want to go back to the beginning and just take a peek at them. It says there in Genesis, God created man in his image and likeness. And I looked at that last week looking at fathers. So there we have the God of all creation creating a human being, a man, in his own image and likeness. And we don't know how long Adam existed just with God, because he was the first created human. Maybe it was a couple of days. Maybe it was 1,000 years. We just don't know. It's a mystery. But God created man in his image and likeness, and they had fellowship with one another. There was a relationship. There was dialogue, I'm sure. There was an enjoyment of one another. God enjoys his creation. Adam enjoyed God. But then it says in chapter 2, verse 18, he says, it's not good that man should be alone. Well, you created him. You created something that was incomplete. He's in your image and likeness. But now you're telling me that it wasn't good that he should be alone. No, I have to think about that. Does that mean it's not good that Adam is lonely? No, it doesn't mean that. It seems to mean that. But this alone thing, it really means that it's not good that man should be by himself, an individual. God knew that. And when he said it's not good, it just means I'm not done yet, okay? Just hold on. Before you pass a judgment, I'm not finished. And then Eve comes into the picture. It's not good that man should be alone. God uses this word alone of himself. Psalm 86:10, for thou art great, thou art God alone. What does that mean? That means you're the only one. You're an individual. You're just God. He's alone. Adam, it's not good that you should be an individual, just all by yourself. What's the implication there? That God has the big picture in mind when it comes to man and woman. And he knows that a man and a woman in a committed relationship, which we're calling marriage, is a good thing. And that the union of a man and a woman can accomplish things that couldn't be done alone by each individual. Tell me, those of you that are married today, are you able to do things with your spouse that you wouldn't ever do or couldn't do without them? And could you be someone and become someone that you probably wouldn't have been if it weren't for the influence of your spouse? I think you would all have to say yes. I know it's yes for me. It's not that my wife makes me something and that's why I married her, but the inevitable result of our relationship is that each person becomes something better than they would have been without. And this is a beautiful thing. Some married couples are very much alike, and it's just like they get along and everything's just right. Well, most marriages, people are like opposites, right? It's true of ours. We're opposites, but somehow we're not opposites. I don't know how that worked, but it's working out. And as you get older and longer in your marriage, you'll see it more and more and more, that the opposite parts are just okay. But there's also now this growing union of something. That's the union of the two. So God knew that in spite of Adam and being his wonderful creation, wonderfully made and all of that, there was still an ingredient that wasn't present, and that was he was alone by himself. And Adam said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make someone for him. And he created all these animals, and I know there's a lot of dog lovers out there, cat lovers, but no, the dog just didn't do it for him. There had to be something more than that. But Adam, he named all the animals, saw them all, and then no, there's more. There's got to be something else out there. Just one more thought about that becoming better because of the union of your spouse. It says in Proverbs 12:4, an excellent wife is the crown of her husband. An excellent wife is not a standalone excellent wife, although she is. She becomes more than that. She now becomes the crown of her husband. And so there is this, and I guess it could go the other way too, that a husband doing what he is this wonderful part of a wife's experience in life. And so we have this mutual benefit to one another as we grow in our relationship. And so God says, I will make him a help. And then in our translations it says meet for him. Now people say, well, that's a help meet. No, that's a help mate. The help space meet in the King James, this word meet, it means fit or appropriate, comparable. All the translators pick different words. Comparable, just right is one. I like that. Suitable. I'll make him a help fit for him, corresponding to him, a help mate, a counterpart. Those are all translations of the same word. The King James says meet. I'll make him a help fit. I'll just say fit for him. Just right. God in his wisdom, and with all the options available, including all the animals and everything else, he could have created, who knows, some super angel or something. He created, he formed, he made Eve. And he made her from him. And there's something to that as well. So with all the options available to him, he could have done anything or nothing. He brought something called a woman to Adam, and he made her fit for him. It's often also translated a helper. That's baseline. This is what the beginning, the husband and wife, this is foundational to everything that a marriage becomes. And as you look at all the instructions about marriage later in the New Testament, you'll see a lot of this relationship about the helper part of the woman and the leadership part of the man. And this is where it all starts, right here. Psalm 33:20 says, regarding this helper, our soul waiteth for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. So wives, don't think that you're just like a helper. No, God is a helper too. So however he's your helper, you can be your husband's helper in terms of that one specific there. That she is, this fit is sometimes translated helper, just like God is. Now, does that mean the man or the woman I choose to marry is a perfect match? Like, oh, when I say just right? Not necessarily. Did mention that. Opposites sometimes are attracted in marriage. Well, then what happens? Well, then marriage, much like family, becomes God's workshop. This is where the sawdust can fly, okay? And you hear the hammers, the sounds of the hammers, and the buzz saws and the chainsaws maybe. You know, it's all happening in the workshop of marriage, or it should be. And you don't just check out and quit. No, get in there. Make it work. Remember, we're not going to see if it works out, we're going to work it out. And that sometimes is what marriage can be. One of my daughters was talking to her younger sister about a boy that she was looking at and ended up marrying. And they were having this discussion, and the older daughter finally said, "Girl, you don't get to check every box. You know, tall, dark, handsome, all of that. You may not get all of those things, but there's a few boxes that should be checked, have to be checked. You know, godly, provider, these sorts of things. But this girl, the younger one, was looking for that perfect somebody, right? And he's not that, but he is perfect for her. And they are wonderfully married, and it's just special to see that. So you don't just get everything in that guy or that girl, but that doesn't matter, because once you enter in, once you commit, then all options are over, and there you are. And now you're going to make it happen for the glory of God. It means a woman is fit for a man not because of shared hobbies or interests or pickleball or they're both golfers or whatever. No, not shared interests. It's because of the very makeup of a man and a woman that they are fit for each other. Think about that. Men have certain inherent qualities, and women are, shall I say, women. They're just the way they are. And even though you might say, wow, God could have done something differently. No. He did it on purpose because he wants us to rely on him. Have you ever considered that when God talks about the fall and the curse and things, that the woman, her desire is going to be for her husband, and then it says that he's going to have to work hard and by the sweat of his brow and all that stuff and be a leader. Well, not all men want to be leaders. Probably most, that's not the thing they want to do. They just want to go off, hunting or something. But not all women want to be submissive either. Hello. But what has God said? He says, I want you to be what I want you to be, and I'm going to enable you to do that in this workshop. Okay? And so the very nature of a man and a woman make them fit for one another, not their hobbies or their interests. Those are fine, and it's nice if you have something you can do with your wife all the time. We all have our shared interests that we enjoy, but we also have things that we do on our own, and that's okay as well. as you get a little more mature, I think a little further along in your relationship, you get used to the things that, some things just aren't going to change, right? And so we just got back from a couple of days of a getaway somewhere, and we just found out that there's things that we just automatically do together and love, but then some point in the day or the next day, there's a couple of hours where you're just going to break off and do the things that you want to do, and it's okay, and both spouses are good with it. And so you have this perfect dialogue and this management of a relationship where everybody gets everything. It's beautiful. You come together when you need to come together in certain activities, and then you have your own activities, and it's all under this beautiful umbrella of this committed relationship. So there's something about a man that benefits a woman and a woman that benefits a man. Now think about this for a second, and this is just sort of a light bulb that came on for me, and I wonder if it will for you as well. Here's a situation I just described, that God created a man, perfect, wonderful, in his image, but then he said it's not good that man should be alone or separate and individual. I'll make him a helper fit for him. And so he does that. Now we're going to look at a passage in the New Testament that says all of that is a picture of something bigger. It's not just Adam and Eve. It's a picture of God's love for his creation. Adam was his creation, right? And then he made a helper fit, suitable for him, because he didn't want that man to be an individual, a separate one. What has God done and is doing? It's not good that God is alone. I'll say that reverently, okay? And he has made a helper fit for him. Because what does the Bible say? This is a mystery, but I speak of Christ's love for the church. He is going to be one flesh, kind of, with his believers, with his dear children. He has made someone, you, the church, his called out ones, fit for him, that he can be with them forever. We weren't fit. We were unfit. We were lost. We were undone. We had rebelled. And God has stepped in to remedy that, so that for all that trust him and believe in him can be with him forever. It's a beautiful picture. I think it's there. I think the fact that God is looking down the corridors of history, he says someday there's going to be a glorified state, and these people that I have made and redeemed to myself are going to be with me forever. And there's this eternal union, like marriage is a union for all of our time on the earth. His union, his marriage, is a union forever. You might just think about that. I think it's there. So is there more to marriage than just marriage? Well, yeah, I just mentioned it. And just to close out here, I want to just touch on a couple of verses. I'm not going to really expound on them much, but Ephesians 5 is really the mother lode for the application of marriage, the spiritual application. And as you understand the application of it, it should make you think more highly of the physical expression of it, that your marriage should be like this because of what it is. So just to pick out a few verses here, Ephesians 5:24. As the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Well, that kind of defines what submission is, right, to the wives. And the husbands here in verse 25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. I do like this ESV translation, gave himself up, not just gave himself. When you give yourself up, there's nothing left. You're relinquishing all control. And it's actually used in a court of law when they sentence someone and they give themselves up to the prosecutors, right? You give yourself up. Christ gave himself up for you. Men, what are you doing for your wives? How high is the bar, right? 5:29, no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it just as Christ does the church. Do you know that Christ cherishes you? He doesn't just love you, he likes you too. And you should do that with your spouse. We've talked about that, the cherishing aspect of the marriage relationship. And then finally, just to paraphrase 31:32 of chapter 5, the two shall become one flesh. And then the commentary, this mystery is profound. Oh yeah, it sure is. In marriage, it sure is, if that's all we were talking about. But we're talking about something more than marriage. This mystery is profound. It refers to Christ and the church. The two shall become one flesh. Yes, in marriage. But in God's heart and in his world and his plans for his creation, it's true as well. The two shall become one flesh. How intimate is that? What is the eternity, the glorified state with God going to be like? Well, who knows? But it's going to be an intimacy. It's going to be a relationship like you've never seen before. The only place you see it in just a small little speck is your marriage relationship as you work on it, as you're in that workshop, making it what it should be. Now, I said I wanted to give you a little encouragement from millennials. So let's close with a few more quotes, shall we? Jessica, 28, says this about marriage. Marriage represents a deep commitment, oh, there it is, and partnership. It's a way to say, we're in this together, no matter what. That's pretty mature for 28. She's got it. Alex, 30, says, for me, marriage is about building a family and creating a stable environment for future children. It provides a foundation of love and support. There's that security aspect. And then here we have Ryan at 27, says, marriage is valuable because it's a partnership again, where both people support each other through life's ups and downs. It's about having a constant in a world that's always changing. That's good too. Laura, 29, says there's a sense of emotional security that comes with marriage. It's comforting to know you have someone who is committed to being there for you. You can always count on them. Another, marriage is a way to align with someone who shares your values and goals. It's about growing together and striving towards common objectives. Sometimes you have to strive in your marriage. And then finally, Brian at 28, he says, marriage adds a level of formality and seriousness to a relationship. It's a public declaration of your commitment to one another. Back to commitment again. That's the foundation of it all. The commitment to the relationship. You don't get that anywhere else. I can leave the home. I can break up my relationship. I can leave my job. I can do all these things. But in marriage, the expectation is you're never leaving. You're always staying there. You're always relying on the Lord to make it what it should be, what He wants it to be. And again, I know, and it's quite obvious in our world, that these things aren't always the way they should be. And there are other messages and other thoughts that could come out about what happens when fill in the blanks. But in terms of what God says about marriage, remember, marriage is honorable. It is precious. It is of exceptional value. And the bed is undefiled. It is pure. It is holy. It is godly. And the most important thing about marriage, you know, when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see, but what did we just read? It pictures and personifies God's love for His church. You don't want that to end. It's not going to end, right? It's permanent. And so He's saying, just like that, you be like this. And that's what God calls us to. So if you're having trouble in your marriage, look to the Lord about it. Look to Him to do what maybe you can't do. Maybe it's gotten to the point where you don't know what's going to happen next. Well, He does. Humble yourself. You got to be humble in your marriage. You got to be broken sometimes. You got to be transparent. You got to speak to one another. You can't just run around holding grudges. And if you have a marriage that's functioning, just enjoy it. Just love it. Boast about it. Put it on social media. Let other people see what God's doing in your life, that they can see what a marriage can be. And then what comes out of that, maybe? Family, children. And so we'll talk about children in other messages. All right, well, praise the Lord for his covenant of marriage, that he saw it from the very beginning. It's not good that a man should be isolated, that he should be by himself. I'm going to make somebody fit for him. I'll make a help meet for him. And he did.